When shy student Emily Harper finds a stranger's umbrella and a cryptic note, she meets reclusive billionaire Alexander Grant. He reveals his family's atrocities and recruits her to expose corporate crimes from Manchester to Buenos Aires. As threats close in, Emily must risk everything to deliver justice and discover her own courage. Before we start the story, leave a comment to let us know which city you're watching from. Like and subscribe to support our community. Your support means a lot to us. Now, enjoy the story as we continue. Emily Harper stood under the cafe's awning, clutching her books to her chest. The storm had drenched the street in silver reflections, and every patter on the pavement felt like a promise or a warning. In her other hand, she held a stiff-spined umbrella that clearly did not belong to her. She blinked as another car splashed by, careless of the spray. The umbrella had been wedged between the chair and table where she'd lost her balance minutes ago. She must have dropped it in her hurry. Now, as she stared at its polished black handle, she felt a strange pull. Inside the umbrella's sleeve was a single sheet of plain white paper, folded twice. Emily's heart skipped. Who leaves a note in a stranger's umbrella? She peeled open the flaps. If you find this, meet me by the old clock tower at midnight. Come alone. Don't trust anyone. Emily's skin prickled. Midnight? The old clock tower? In a city where every corner held cameras and busy sidewalks, this felt like something out of a thriller novel. Was it a prank? A dare? Or something more dangerous? She glanced around. Only the stoic cat statue by the cafe's door kept her company. The note's penmanship was elegant, looped letters, each stroke precise. Yet the words trembled with urgency. Her mind raced. Her own plans for the evening had been simple. Finish her essay on urban architecture, head home, and curl up with hot tea. Now she held an invitation to a mystery she never asked for. And then there was the umbrella itself. Its canopy was heavy, the kind you'd hand to someone important. A gold crest was faintly visible near the tip, an intertwined G. G, Emily whispered. That single letter felt like a key. She slid the umbrella from its cover. At that moment, a gust of wind nearly tore it from her hands. She caught it, heart pounding, and felt the metal ribs in her palm. Why had someone stranded both umbrella and note? Part of her wanted to stamp the note with return to sender. But she couldn't just let it go. There was something about a midnight rendezvous that called to her shy heart, whispering that this night was different from any other. As she walked home, the umbrella over one shoulder, the note pressed inside her coat, she wondered what awaited at the clock tower. Did she dare go? She closed her apartment door, leaned the umbrella in the corner, and sat by the window. Rain still drummed on the glass. She smoothed the note on her lap, breathing slow. Would she break her routine? Risk alarm or embarrassment? Emily was no adventurer. She was the sort of girl who kept her thoughts tucked away, like the flowers in her grandmother's attic. But tonight, strange courage bloomed inside her. The city's neon lights reflected in her eyes as she whispered to herself, I have to know. She tucked the note into her journal, unlatched her window, and let the rain's cool air wash over her face. Somewhere out there, someone waited. A stranger, or a millionaire hiding a truth. She didn't know which. But come midnight, Emily Harper would find out. Emily froze. The alley behind the clock tower was darker than she'd imagined, but she'd walked too far to turn back now. The umbrella, hers in all but ownership, felt heavy at her side. She stepped forward, voice small. Who's there? A tall figure emerged under the tower's dim light. His coat was dark, tailored to perfection. Even in the rain, his hair looked styled, untouched by wind or water. His eyes, cold and focused, reflected the clock's pale glow. Why did you come? His voice was low, measured. Emily swallowed. You left this. She held up the umbrella and the note. He glanced at her, then at her offering hand. I left that umbrella. His tone carried surprise, as if he'd forgotten it himself. He took the umbrella and note with a guarded motion. She shivered. Why the note? Who are you? He folded the note, sliding it into his pocket. Names don't matter. Emily's pulse throbbed. You asked me to come alone. Why? A harsh laugh. To be sure you'd really show. He closed the umbrella with a snap and tucked it under one arm. Most people would ignore a stranger's message. She stepped closer, emboldened by a spark of anger. I'm not most people. He studied her for a long moment. Then, as if deciding something profound, he gestured to a bench. Sit. Rain dripped off his coat. Emily hesitated, then sat. Water pooled at her shoes, but she didn't care. He joined her, umbrella held above both of them. I'm Alexander Grant. Emily blinked. The Alexander Grant? He shrugged. If you must know, yes. The name meant nothing at first, until she remembered the crest on the umbrella. Grant Industries, skyscrapers, factories, global reach. A billionaire at 25. A recluse by choice. Now sitting 2 feet away, offering her shelter from the rain. I've only seen your name in papers, Emily confessed. I never imagined meeting you like this. Alexander's eyes softened. I never intended to meet anyone. He leaned back. I wanted proof. Proof that someone would risk their safety to discover a secret. Emily frowned. What secret? He closed his eyes as though weighing his words. A truth my empire hides. Her breath hitched. You mean? He nodded. My company has roots in more than just industry. We've made mistakes, dark mistakes. I need someone honest to help me set things right. Emily's head spun. She'd come for a note and an umbrella, not to shoulder a billionaire's guilt. Yet here she was, heart pounding, mind racing. Why me? She whispered. He opened one eye. Because you came. Silence fell between them, broken only by the rain. Emily stared at the note in his hand. Its ink had begun to blur. If she agreed to help, could she trust him? Or would she become the next lost piece in his tangled world? Alexander lowered the umbrella. A droplet fell on Emily's cheek. She closed her eyes, tasted the rain. She knew what courage felt like now. I'll help, she said. He looked startled. Then he stood. Good. He nodded once, briskly, and with a snap of the umbrella, led her deeper into the labyrinth of the city, toward the first clue, and the first step in uncovering a truth neither of them fully understood. Emily followed Alexander through narrow streets lit by flickering lamps. The rain eased to a drizzle, but the chill remained. She pulled her coat tighter. He walked without looking back, confident he would remain unseen. She watched his footsteps, feeling the weight of her promise settle in her chest. Help him set things right. She didn't even know what things were yet. They arrived at an iron gate marked with the same gold crest as her umbrella. Alexander pressed a hidden latch. The gate swung open. Inside was a courtyard. Overhead, a glass ceiling dripped water onto marble statues. He led her to a door etched with vines of metal. This is the heart of it, he said softly. Emily's breath caught. She traced the vines with her eyes. A private archive? Alexander nodded. Here lie the records no one else sees. He tapped a security panel. The door slid back. Inside was a vast room of shelves, each lined with ledgers and boxes. The air smelled of leather and dust. A single lamp cast long shadows. This is where it began, he whispered. My grandfather built this place. He believed in progress, no matter the cost. He picked up a ledger bound in crimson leather. Its cover read Grant Industries, 1965 to 1980. He opened to the first page. In 1965, my grandfather funded a mining operation in the hills by Manchester. That project destroyed villages. People died, families lost homes. Emily stared. And no one knew? He shook his head. The official records say it was an investment that lifted local economies. But the truth was buried. She swallowed. Why keep it hidden? He closed the book. Reputation. Power. The world only sees success, not the shadows behind it. Emily looked around. Rows of secrets lay waiting. She realized then why he needed her. Someone with a clean heart to guide him through his family's darkness. He handed her a file. This is your first task. Read it. Find the names. She took it. The cover bore a single word, Manchester. Inside were photos of ruined homes and handwritten witness accounts. She sat at a table and began to read, her eyes widening with each page. These people endured so much, she murmured. Exactly. Alexander's voice was gentle but firm. Those debts must be paid. Emily closed the file and met his gaze. But how? They've been gone for decades. He stood and walked to a cabinet, retrieving a small wooden box. Inside were old coins, one from each household. Symbolic, he said. I want to return what was taken. Not just money, but acknowledgement. She opened the box, touching a tarnished coin. You really mean it? He nodded. I want to build a foundation in their name. Restore what was lost. Emily felt a swell of something. Hope? Fear? Determination? She stood, closing her own journal. Then let's begin. He offered her the umbrella, now folded and dry. She accepted it, feeling its weight anew. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city breathed around them, oblivious to the pact made beneath the glass ceiling. Emily slipped the umbrella under her arm. Together, they stepped back into the night, ready to face the debts of the past and write a new truth. For a millionaire atoning for hidden sins, and a shy girl discovering her own courage at last. The train to Manchester rocked gently beneath Emily. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass, watching traffic lights blur into streams of red and gold. Alexander sat opposite her, umbrella folded neatly at his feet, face unreadable. "Are you sure about this?" Emily asked, voice low. He nodded. "The first family lived in Greenfield Vale. I have their names." He handed her a manila folder. Inside, faded photographs and a list of names. The Bennetts, Margaret, Thomas, little Elsie. "We start here." Emily closed her eyes, breath catching. She felt out of place. A shy university student in a world of suits, secrets, and silent debts. But each name in that folder was more than ink. They were people who had paid the price of her new ally's ambition. The train slowed at Manchester Central. Rain spattered the platform. Emily gripped Alexander's hand reflexively. He squeezed back, urging calm. Outside, the city smelled of wet stone and diesel. They hailed a cab and drove north, past factories and terraces until the streets thinned and the hills began. The Bennetts' home once stood here, but now only wildflowers grew among crumbled stones. Emily stepped out, umbrella in hand, and paused. "Where do we start?" Alexander pointed to a lone cottage across a meadow. Smoke curled from its chimney. Old Mrs. Harding is the historian here. She knew the Bennetts as children. They crossed the field under a slate-gray sky. The cottage door creaked open before they knocked. An old woman, stooped and keen-eyed, peered out. "Can I help you?" she asked, voice brittle like dried leaves. Alexander showed his ID. "I'm Alexander Grant. This is Emily Harper. We're here about the Bennett family." Mrs. Harding's eyes narrowed. "Grant Industries? You want money?" Emily stepped forward. "We want to learn. To restore what was lost." The old woman studied them. Then, with a nod, she stepped aside. Inside, the cottage was lined with books, pressed flowers, and framed letters. A kettle hissed quietly. "Sit," she commanded. "Now tell me everything." Alexander recounted the archive, his grandfather's mining deal, the displacement, the hush that followed. Mrs. Harding pressed her lips together. "My parents were friends with Thomas Bennett. They told me how the mine swallowed homes. My village nearly died." She retrieved a leather-bound journal. "I kept this." Emily opened it carefully. The pages held Margaret Bennett's handwriting. Descriptions of flooded cellars, sick children coughing from dust, pleas sent to the city that never answered. Tears blurred Emily's vision. They suffered so much. Mrs. Harding sighed. And no one heard them because they were poor. The suits in London didn't care. Alexander closed his eyes. "That changes now." Mrs. Harding studied Emily. "You're not one of them," she said softly. "Yet here you are, carrying an umbrella that brought you." Emily touched the umbrella's handle. The single letter G gleamed in the dim room. "It saved me," she whispered. Mrs. Harding stood. "Come with me." She led them through a back room to a small shrine. Photos of village gatherings, with Margaret and Thomas smiling arm in arm. Beneath them lay a clay pot filled with wildflower seeds. "My mother planted those before she died," Mrs. Harding said. "She hoped someone would remember." Alexander knelt, gently lifting the pot. He dug into his pocket and pulled out coins, old, tarnished, marked with Grant Industries' seal. One for each household that vanished. He placed them among the seeds. Emily watched the seeds mingle with coins. She felt a rush of hope. "They'll grow," she said. Mrs. Harding smiled faintly. "They will." Outside, rain began again. Emily closed her journal and looked at Alexander. "What's next?" He rose, taking her umbrella. "We rebuild. First, we fund a memorial here. Then we move on to the next site." As they left the cottage, Emily realized she was no longer just the shy girl with an umbrella. She was a bearer of truth and hope into places where the past still hurt. Back in London, Alexander guided Emily through the marble halls of Grant Tower. The lobby gleamed under chandeliers and marble columns stretched skyward. Security guards in crisp uniforms nodded to him. People moved aside respectfully. Emily clutched her manila folder. The memorial in Manchester was underway, but here another truth lurked, one buried deeper. They entered a private elevator. Alexander punched a code, and the doors closed without a chime. Emily's pulse quickened. Their destination, the corporate boardroom on the 50th floor. When the doors opened, a long table of dark wood stretched before them. At its head sat Gregory Shaw, Grant Industries' chief legal officer. His salt and pepper hair was perfect, his suit tailored like armor. "Alexander," he said smoothly. "And you must be Miss Harper." His eyes flicked to Emily's folder. "What brings you here?" Alexander moved to a seat. "Gregory, I'm auditing the company's old files. Starting with Manchester. Thanks to Emily's help, we're making amends. Now we turn to the factories in South America." Gregory's jaw tightened. "That project is closed. Archived." Emily stood. "Archived or hidden?" The lawyer released a breath. "You're risking shareholder confidence." Alexander's voice cut through the tension. "These aren't just files. They're people's lives." Gregory stood, steepling his fingers. "And reopening old wounds could destroy the company's value." Emily felt anger bloom. "What good is value if it costs lives?" Gregory's eyes narrowed. "So emotional," he said coldly. "Mr. Grant, open this file." He slid a thick binder across the table. Its spine read Buenos Aires, 1978 to 1990. Alexander opened it. Inside were reports of factory collapses, toxic spills, forced labor. Emily's stomach churned. Gregory leaned forward. "Some mistakes are better left alone. You'll ruin everything you've built." Emily placed a hand on Alexander's. "We've already begun." Gregory's expression darkened. "Don't be naive." He pressed a button on his cuff, and 2 guards appeared at the door. "This meeting is over." Emily's heart pounded as the guards moved toward her. She rounded the table. "I won't back down." Alexander stood too. "Neither will I." Gregory stepped back. "Then don't come to me when your little foundation crumbles." He gave Emily a mocking smile. "Good luck, Miss Harper." They left the boardroom under heavy guard. In the elevator, Emily's legs shook. "Thank you," Alexander said softly. "You saved us from silence." She took a deep breath. "We're just getting started." That night, Emily sat at her desk, umbrella propped by the window. She reread the Buenos Aires file. Names, dates, locations. She felt the weight of expectation, to bring justice to people she'd never meet. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Stop digging, or the next leak won't be files." Emily's blood ran cold. She looked at the umbrella's handle, a silent promise. Alexander's text came next. "Are you safe?" She typed back. "I got a warning. But I won't stop." As midnight chimed, Emily slipped the umbrella over her shoulder. Tomorrow they would travel to Buenos Aires, dangerous ground. But she had found her courage. And she knew that a shy girl with an umbrella could change a millionaire's world, and perhaps the world itself. The next morning, rain pounded the pavement as Emily and Alexander boarded a private jet. Emily pressed her forehead to the window, watching clouds swirl below. The anonymous threat rattled her. No longer was their mission just about truth. Now it was personal. Alexander reached over and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Are you okay?" She nodded. "I'm scared, but I can't stop." He offered a small smile. "I know, and I'll protect you." The flight was silent except for the hum of engines. Emily opened her journal and wrote the names of 6 towns in Buenos Aires province where factories once stood. Each name felt heavy. Rosario, Córdoba, San Miguel, Mendoza, La Plata, and Salta. As the jet descended into Ezeiza Airport, Emily's phone buzzed again, another warning. "Change course or pay the price." She showed Alexander. He folded the note thoughtfully. "They're watching. We must move carefully." They cleared customs without issue and drove into the city. Buenos Aires unfolded like a painting. Colorful buildings, grand plazas, and throngs of people. Here, the factories had powered growth and pain. Their first stop was Rosario. At a small cafe near the river, they met Diego Alvarez, a local journalist who had uncovered stories of workers falling ill from chemical exposure decades ago. Diego greeted them warmly, but glanced around nervously. People here remember the factory, but few talk openly. Emily sipped mate tea, its warmth calming her. "We want to meet those affected or their families." Diego nodded. "But some will fear retaliation." He led them through winding streets to a tenement. On the ground floor lived Senora Castillo, whose husband had worked the factory. Inside, the air smelled of mildew and cooking stew. Senora Castillo, stooped and kind-eyed, welcomed them. She offered tea and told them of her husband's cough that never left, of money they never received, and of letters unanswered by Grant Industries. Emily listened, tears pricking. Senora Castillo pressed a folded photo into Emily's hand. Her husband, healthy and smiling before the factory years. "I kept this," she said, "in hope someone remembers him." Emily opened her folder and retrieved a crisp envelope. Not money, but a promise of a scholarship fund in his name. Senora Castillo's lips trembled as she held it. Outside, Diego caught Emily's eye. "They whisper your name already," the girl with the umbrella. Emily felt a thrill of purpose. "Then I'll carry it further." They left Rosario under afternoon sun, but Emily's mood darkened as another message arrived. Not everyone wants the truth. That evening, in their hotel, Alexander and Emily mapped their next moves. Mendoza's vineyards, Salta's hills, places where the company's toxic runoff still lingered. Emily's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a photo. Their jet on the runway, tagged with red circles around the engines. The caption read, "Too public for your own good." Her hands trembled. "They know where we are." Alexander pulled her close. "We adjust. We go incognito." He called his assistant and arranged a decoy itinerary. A flight to Uruguay, then a bus back to Argentina. Meanwhile, they would slip into Mendoza by land, under the radar. Emily looked at the umbrella handle in the lamplight. The world felt suddenly small. Every move watched, every step tracked. But she would not turn back. "Let them watch," she said, voice steady. "They'll see we cannot be stopped." Alexander smiled, pride softening his features. Together, rain tapped on the window as they prepared to leave. Emily packed the umbrella in her bag, its letter G peeking out. It had brought her here, into a web of secrets and survival. And come dawn, they would once again defy the darkness. One step closer to uncovering the truth that a millionaire had hidden for generations, and a shy girl had the courage to reveal. Emily stepped from the dusty bus into the warm Mendoza sun. The air smelled of ripening grapes and old earth. She held Alexander's coat over her shoulders. Despite the heat, the layer felt reassuring. They had ditched their car at the border and slipped in by bus, hoping no one would trace them. They walked down a narrow lane between vine-covered trellises. Alexander glanced around, alert for followers. "The report says these fields were poisoned," he said, voice low. "Grant Industries bought the land in 1985. They dumped waste in the streams." Emily's heart tightened. "People got sick?" He nodded. "Families lived here for years, making wine. But their children fell ill." No one connected the dots until decades later. They found Senora Alvarez, a widow whose husband had run the vineyard. Her face was lined but proud. She welcomed them under a faded awning. Cups of sweet, iced tea appeared. Emily watched as Senora Alvarez studied her umbrella. It had become her signature. "I knew this day would come," the old woman said softly. "I have something for you." She unlocked a weathered chest and pulled out a stack of yellowed letters. "These are my letters to Grant Industries. I sent them the day my son died." Emily took the letters gently. The ink was smudged from tears. "You never got a reply?" The widow shook her head. "Not one." Alexander exchanged a glance with Emily. "We will fix that." Senora Alvarez guided them to the edge of her once thriving vineyard. "Look," she said, pointing to a creek running by the vines. The water was dark, oily. "This should be clear. Fish used to swim here." Emily knelt and touched the water. It stank of chemicals. Her stomach churned. "How did you cope?" She looked away, tears in her eyes. "I buried my grief in these letters. My son, he was only 6. Emily swallowed. "I'm so sorry." The widow's gaze hardened. "Promises were broken. I will not rest until my land is healed." Alexander laid a hand on her shoulder. "We will fund cleanup. We'll plant new vines, restore the creek. And we'll build a community center for the children who still suffer." Senora Alvarez's shoulders relaxed. "Thank you." As they walked back to town, Emily felt the weight of every story she carried. Each place they visited added another voice to the chorus of those wronged. She opened her journal and wrote down plans. Cleanup fund, memorial plaque, medical outreach. That night, at a small inn, Emily reviewed maps and schedules. Alexander leaned over her shoulder, tracing routes with his finger. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. Another message from the same unknown number. "You cannot help them. Go home." Emily showed Alexander. He read it, eyes darkening. "They're close." She pressed her lips together. "I won't stop now." He nodded. "Neither will I." They finalized their Mendoza commitments. A meeting with local officials, funds wired under an anonymous trust, cleanup teams mobilized. When they emerged into the warm night, the vineyard lights twinkled like stars. Emily took a deep breath. They will rebuild this place sooner than they ever thought. Alexander smiled. "And then we moved to Salta." Emily looked up at the sky. It was clear, full of promise. Despite the threat, she felt steady. She had found her calling. Together, they set off into the dark, ready to face whatever dangers lay ahead. The bus climbed narrow roads into the foothills of Salta. Emily pressed her face to the window, tracing the terraced hillsides. Each ledge once held small workshops where chemicals were processed. Those workshops had belonged to Grant Industries in the early 1990s. Alexander sat beside her, reviewing witness statements on a tablet. "These families live in the old quarter," he said. "They remember the factory's fumes and the sickness that followed." The bus stopped at a dusty terminal. Emily and Alexander stepped into a swirl of color. Vendors selling woven blankets, children playing in the square, the cathedral's bells echoing off the hills. They walked to an adobe house where Senora Mata lived, her grandson by her side. His cough rattled in the thin mountain air. Senora Mata ushered them inside. She pointed to a faded photograph on the mantel, her husband in a factory uniform. Below it, a half-empty glass jar of pills. "He took these every day," she said, scooping a handful. "Painkillers." The doctor said he had no hope. Emily picked up the jar, its label cracked. "What happened?" The grandmother's eyes filled. "He died in 1994. They said it was a heart attack. But it was the dust, lead and arsenic in his lungs." Alexander knelt beside the boy, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "We'll arrange medical care," he promised, "and help your family move to a safer village." Emily watched the boy's large eyes fill with cautious hope. She felt her chest tighten. Every life they touched changed them both. They left the house and walked the narrow streets. Suddenly, two men in suits appeared behind them, following at a discreet distance. Emily's heart raced. She whispered to Alexander, "They're back." He nodded. "Stay calm." They ducked into a cafe and ordered cold juices. Emily slipped her phone into her coat pocket and held her umbrella handle tight. The men entered, scanning the room. Emily's breath caught as one of them approached their table. "Mr. Grant," the man said softly. "A word?" Alexander stood. "Not now." The man's expression hardened. "They will pay if you continue." Emily rose too. "Leave." He smiled, as if amused by her defiance. "You're in over your heads." Then he turned and left. Emily's hands trembled. Alexander placed a steadying hand on her back. "They'll make more threats." She forced a nod. "But they'll fail." That evening, safe in their rented apartment, Emily sketched plans for the boys' treatment and relocation. Alexander contacted a doctor friend in Buenos Aires to arrange care. Emily fell into bed, her mind buzzing. At midnight, her phone buzzed again, this time a video. The two men dragging an empty suitcase labeled Mendoza into a dumpster, the tag Grant Industries visible. A warning. Emily stared at the screen. "They're not stopping." Alexander sat beside her. "Then we accelerate." She looked at him, resolve shining in her eyes. "We finish this, every last sight." He nodded. La Plata and Cordoba await. Outside, the wind rattled the shutters. Inside, Emily felt a calm determination. She had started as a shy girl with an umbrella. Now she was a force of change. And Salta was only the beginning. They arrived in La Plata at dawn. Emily yawned against the cold breeze. The city's grand avenues were empty, shadows long. Grant Industries had owned a chemical plant on the outskirts, closed in 2002. Its legacy was a swamp of toxic sludge. Alexander led Emily through cobblestone streets to Mayor Vega's office. The mayor greeted them with practiced courtesy. His polished desk hid files detailing the plant's closure, and hush money paid to silence whistleblowers. Mayor Vega poured mint tea. "I remember that plant," he said smoothly. "My father worked there." Emily leaned forward. "Were workers ever compensated?" The mayor sighed. "Some were, but many agreed to sign non-disclosure agreements. They needed the money." Alexander set the umbrella on the desk between stacks of files. "Non-disclosure does not erase responsibility." Mayor Vega's smile faltered. "We risk lawsuits. Your family name could be tarnished." Emily's voice was firm. "We will fund a cleanup. We will meet with the families. And we will create a scholarship fund in the community's name." The mayor's eyes flicked to the umbrella's handle. "The girl with the umbrella," he murmured. "I've heard rumors." Emily nodded. "I carry it for every voice unheard." Mayor Vega stepped back. "I will help you, but you must keep this private until we have formal agreements." They spent the day signing papers, meeting community leaders, and planning the swamp's remediation. Emily watched the dusty marsh, where dead reeds stood silent. She imagined it green again, water clean, children playing by its edge. That night, as they departed the mayor's office, Alexander's phone buzzed. It was Gregory Shaw. "Stop this madness, or I will expose your betrayal." Emily looked at Alexander. He's the one behind the threats. He squared his shoulders. He thought he could protect the company by burying the truth. Emily took his hand. "Then we show the world." 2 weeks later, Paris. Emily and Alexander stood before a small stage at the World Ethics Summit. Press packed the room. Cameras flashed. Behind them, a large projection read Grant Industries Atones. Past, present, future. Emily's heart pounded as she clutched the umbrella one last time. Alexander placed a hand on her shoulder. They had gathered every document, every testimony, from Manchester's ruined homes to Mendoza's poisoned streams, Salta's sick child, La Plata's swamp. He spoke first. "For decades, my family hid these truths. Tonight, we correct that." He detailed the cleanup plans, the memorials, the scholarship funds, and medical care. Each project named for those who suffered. The Bennetts, the Alvarez family, Senora Mata's grandson, La Plata's workers. Emily stepped forward. Her voice was clear and strong. "I was a shy girl with no power. But I found this umbrella, and a note that changed my life. I met Alexander Grant, who chose to face his family's sins." She opened the umbrella, letting the soft stage lights catch its handle. This umbrella carried courage. May it remind us all, when we lift the cover on the past, we make a better future. Applause thundered. Cameras flashed brighter. Gregory Shaw sat in the front row, expression unreadable. He did not stand. After the summit, reporters swarmed them. Emily answered questions about her journey, her fears, her hopes. Alexander spoke of responsibility and renewal. Together, they turned a private atonement into global inspiration. Backstage, Emily sank onto a couch. Alexander knelt before her. "You did it," he said softly. She smiled tiredly. "We did it." He produced a small box. Inside was a simple silver pin shaped like an umbrella. "For your courage," he said, fastening it to her coat. Emily touched the pin, tears in her eyes. "Thank you." Alexander rose and offered his arm. "Come home with me." They returned to London, where the Foundation's first board meeting convened. Emily took a seat among activists and historians. She no longer felt shy. Her voice guided decisions, her heart set the mission's course. Years later, vines thrived in Mendoza. Children played by a restored creek. In Salta, the relocated families built a new village. La Plata's swamp was a marshland reserve. And in Manchester, wildflowers bloomed where stones once lay. Sometimes Emily walked those fields, her umbrella, now a symbol, by her side. Alexander joined her, quiet pride in his eyes. One evening, under a sky the color of glass, Emily whispered, "We changed the world." He kissed her forehead. "You changed me." And in that moment, beneath the gentle arch of her umbrella, they both found peace, and the truth they dared to reveal. Don't let the next twist in Emily's journey pass you by. Subscribe now for daily stories that uncover hidden truths, spark courage, and transport you from rainy London alleys to sun-drenched vineyards. Join our community of fearless readers and get a new chapter in your inbox every morning. Click subscribe and carry the adventure with you. One story, one umbrella, one revelation at a time.